The moment my boss smirked and said no bonus for you, I knew he'd just signed the company's death warrant. I didn't scream. I didn't slam my fist on the table. I simply smiled, opened a hidden folder on my laptop, and prepared to detonate a data bomb that would bury a $5 billion merger. They thought I was harmless, a quiet woman in tech who'd take whatever scraps they threw. They were wrong, dead wrong. In 72 hours, their entire data infrastructure would collapse, and I'd be sipping wine while watching their empire burn from the inside out. My name is Emily Carter, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed hard work actually meant something at Northbridge Analytics. 32 years old, 10 years in data engineering, and naive enough to think talent would be recognized. The champagne was still cold when they erased me from existence. The project had been my baby for 18 months, a complete overhaul of our data infrastructure that would save the company millions annually. I'd pulled 100-hour weeks, sacrificed weekends, missed my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner, every line of code, every database schema, every optimization algorithm. They all had my fingerprints on them. When we went live in September, the system performed 40% above projections. The C-suite was ecstatic. Emails flew around with words like revolutionary and game-changing. The celebration party happened on a Thursday. I remember because I'd bought a new dress specifically for it, navy blue, professional, but with enough style to say I belonged in those upper-floor conference rooms. The CEO himself, Richard Stern, raised a glass to the team that made miracles happen. Funny how the team suddenly became very selective. Mark Holloway stood at the podium, his perfectly coiffed hair gleaming under the conference room lights. Product director, they called him. Though the man couldn't write a SQL query if his trust fund depended on it, he smiled that practice smile, the one he probably learned at whatever Ivy League school Daddy paid for, and proceeded to explain his vision for the new system. When I conceptualized this architecture, he said, and I nearly choked on my sparkling water. Conceptualized. The man had literally asked me what API stood for 6 months ago. The presentation slides flickered across the screen, my diagrams, my flowcharts, my solutions to problems he didn't even understand existed. But my name, nowhere. Not in the credits, not in the acknowledgements, not even in the footnotes of the internal newsletter they'd send out tomorrow. Sarah from HR caught my eye across the room. She knew. A few others did too. The actual engineers who'd worked alongside me, but they stayed silent, nursing their drinks and avoiding eye contact. That's when I understood. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate. After the party, I approached Mark in his corner office, the one with the view of the Chicago skyline that he loved showing off to visitors. About the bonus structure we discussed, I said, keeping my voice steady. He didn't even look up from his monitor. Oh, that, yeah, budget got tight. You know how it is. We had an agreement, 20% of the cost savings from the first year. Now he looked up, and that smirk, God, that smirk that made me want to throw his pretentious espresso machine through the window. I don't recall anything in writing. Emily, besides, you're already well compensated for someone at your level. Your level, as if I hadn't just built the backbone of a system that would make this company competitive for the next decade. The entire data infrastructure runs on my architecture, I said. The company's architecture, he corrected, leaning back in his $8,000 Herman Miller chair. You're an employee. Everything you create belongs to Northbridge. I thought someone smart enough to build databases would understand basic employment law. I nodded slowly, smiled even. Of course, you're absolutely right. He seemed surprised by my calm acceptance. Expected tears, maybe, or anger, perhaps a threat to quit that he could laugh off. We both knew the non-compete clause in my contract would keep me from working for any competitor for 2 years. Glad we understand each other, he said, already turning back to his screen. Close the door on your way out. I walked back to my desk, sat down, and opened a folder buried deep in my personal directory. A folder I'd created 18 months ago, when I'd first sensed the vultures circling. They wanted to pick my bones clean fine, but they'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd built their entire house of cards. And I knew exactly which card to pull. The memory burned bright as I sat at my desk that night. The office empty except for the cleaning crew. 18 months ago, When I'd started building the new system, I wasn't stupid. I'd seen what happened to Jennifer in accounting, who'd developed a revolutionary forecasting model, pushed out 6 months later. Her work rebranded under her manager's name. I'd watched Tom from infrastructure get fired the day after his retention bonus vested, his automation script suddenly becoming department property. So I'd taken precautions. The data infrastructure required specialized software from a vendor called Nexus Systems. They provided the core engine that made everything run. Without their license, our databases were just expensive decorations. During negotiations, I'd been the only one who actually read the entire contract. Mark had been too busy golfing with potential investors. Legal had skimmed it, focused only on liability clauses. But buried in Appendix D, subsection 7.3.2, I'd added a single line during revision rounds: license validity contingent upon the continued employment and full compensation, including all agreed-upon bonuses and incentives, of the designated Chief Data Engineer, Emily Carter. The beauty was in the specificity, not just employment, full compensation, including bonuses. The vendor had questioned it once. I'd explained it as a security measure, ensuring continuity of expertise for such a critical system. They'd bought it. Mark had signed it without reading. Legal had rubber-stamped it because the overall deal saved us $2 million annually. I pulled up the email chain from 8 months ago. There it was. Mark's message promising me 20% of first-year savings. Not legally binding on its own. Perhaps. But when combined with the vendor contract, it was a ticking time bomb. The folder I'd named Insurance contained everything. Email threads, original system designs with my digital signature, Git commits showing I'd written 92% of the codebase, meeting recordings where Mark admitted he didn't understand the technical aspects, screenshots of Slack conversations where he'd asked me to explain basic concepts before board presentations. But the crown jewel was the vendor contract itself, fully executed, legally binding, and about to become very, very relevant. I started documenting everything meticulously. The presentation where they'd erased my contributions, screenshot and archived, the internal newsletter draft that didn't mention my name, saved and backed up, the revised org chart that somehow showed Mark as lead system architect, downloaded and stored in 3 separate locations. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called my cousin Daniel, the lawyer who'd always said I was too nice for corporate America. "Emily, it's 11:30 at night," he answered, voice groggy. "I need you to look at something, a contract clause." I heard him shift, probably sitting up. "What kind of clause?" "The kind that could bring down a $5 billion merger." Silence. "Then send it over, encrypted." I did. Waited while he read. His low whistle told me everything I needed to know. "Emily, do they know about this?" "Not yet." "When did they violate the compensation terms?" "Today. Well, technically they announced it today. The bonus was due last Friday." "So the license is already void?" "Technically, yes, but the system has a 30-day grace period built in. They won't know anything's wrong until that expires." "That's..." He paused, and I could hear him rereading. "That's brilliant. And completely legal. You could destroy them." "I don't want to destroy them," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I want what I'm owed, plus interest for the inconvenience. And if they don't pay..." I looked at the Chicago skyline through the window. Lights twinkling like stars. Somewhere up there, Mark was probably at some trendy bar, laughing about how he'd played the game and won. Then they'll learn why you should never underestimate your engineers, especially the ones who built your entire kingdom. I hung up and started preparing. Bank statements showing the missing bonus. Performance reviews rating me as exceptional for 5 straight years. The paper trail was perfect, but I wouldn't deploy it yet. Let them think they'd won. Let them get comfortable. In 28 days, when the grace period expired, they'd wake up to find their entire data infrastructure frozen, right in the middle of due diligence for the biggest merger in company history. I closed my laptop, gathered my things, and headed for the elevator. The cleaning lady, Maria, nodded at me. "Working late again, Miss Emily." "Not anymore, Maria, not anymore." The ember had been lit. Now I just had to wait for it to become an inferno. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in corporate theater. I arrived at 8:30 sharp every morning, left at 6 in the evening, attended meetings with a pleasant smile. I even congratulated Mark publicly on his successful system implementation during the Monday all-hands. The look of smug satisfaction on his face was almost worth the acid burning in my stomach. Emily's being such a team player, I overheard him telling Richard Stern by the coffee machine. I was worried she'd make a fuss about the bonus situation, but she understands how business works. I understood perfectly, better than he could imagine. The silence was deliberate, calculated. Every normal interaction was a move on the chessboard. When junior developers came to me with questions about the system, I helped them thoroughly, documented everything, and CC'd Mark on the solutions. Let the record show I was indispensable. Let it show I was professional until the very end. But the whispers had started. "Hey, Emily." Kevin from legal stopped by my desk on a Tuesday afternoon. "Random question. Did we ever finalize all the appendices on the Nexus contract?" I kept typing, didn't look up. "Everything was signed and filed 8 months ago. Why?" "Just doing a compliance review. Some of these software contracts have weird clauses." I said noncommittally. "I wouldn't know about the legal stuff. I just handle the technical side." He lingered for a moment, then walked away. I watched his reflection in my monitor as he went straight to Rebecca Miles' office. The head of legal? Interesting. 2 days later, Sarah from HR scheduled a routine check-in. "How are things going?" "Emily, I know the past few weeks have been intense." I smiled warmly. "Everything's great. The system's running smoothly. The team's hitting all our metrics." "And you're feeling valued." The pause before valued was telling. She knew something. "I'm focused on doing my job well," I said. "That's what matters." She made notes on her tablet, stylus clicking against the screen. "If there were any concerns, any issues with compensation or recognition, you know my door's always open." "I appreciate that, Sarah, but like I said, everything's fine." The next week, the questions became more direct. Rebecca Miles herself appeared at my desk on a Wednesday, trying to look casual. "Emily, quick question about the Nexus implementation. You handled most of the vendor negotiations, right?" "I was the technical lead. Yes, Mark handled the business side." "But you reviewed the technical requirements, the appendices." I tilted my head, playing innocent. "Is there a problem?" No, just thorough documentation is important, especially with the merger talks." "Ah, yes, the merger. Global Tech Solutions, a $40 billion giant, was in advanced negotiations to acquire Northbridge for $5 billion. The due diligence was in full swing. Teams of lawyers and accountants crawling through every document, every contract, every line item. The data infrastructure was the crown jewel of the acquisition, our competitive advantage that justified the premium price. "I keep excellent documentation," I said. "Everything's in the shared drive, fully accessible." Rebecca's smile was tight. "Including any special conditions." I documented everything exactly as it was signed. Every clause, every appendix. I believe in transparency. She left without another word, heels clicking urgently down the hallway. That afternoon, I saw her in Mark's office, then both of them in Richard's, hands gesturing, voices raised just enough that I could see the tension through the glass walls. Mark kept shaking his head, pointing at his computer screen. At 4:45, an emergency meeting appeared on my calendar. Conference Room A, 6 p.m., required attendees Emily Carter, Mark Holloway, Rebecca Miles, Sarah HR, Richard Stern. I declined it. Mark appeared at my desk within 30 seconds. "You can't decline this." "I have a dentist appointment," I said, pulling on my jacket. "Happy to reschedule for tomorrow." "This is about the Nexus contract." "Then it can definitely wait until tomorrow, unless there's an emergency." His jaw clenched. "There might be complications." "Complications." I feigned concern. "The system's running perfectly. All metrics are green." "It's not about the performance. It's about compliance." I shouldered my bag, looked him straight in the eye. "Mark, you signed that contract. You assured everyone it was solid. I'm sure whatever concerns you have are just misunderstandings. We can discuss it tomorrow when everyone's had time to review properly." I walked past him, past Rebecca hovering in the hallway, past Sarah wringing her hands by the elevator, got in, pressed the button for the lobby, and watched the doors close on their panicked faces. 21 days until the grace period expired. 21 days until they understood that silence wasn't submission. It was the calm before the storm. The emergency meeting happened the next morning at 7 a.m. They didn't wait for normal business hours. When I walked in with my coffee, they were all already there, looking like they'd been up all night. Rebecca had legal documents spread across the table. Mark's usually perfect hair was disheveled. Richard Stern sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, eyes cold. "Sit," he said. I sat, taking my time, sipping my coffee. Rebecca slid a document across the table, the Nexus contract, Appendix D highlighted in yellow. "Explain this." I read it slowly, as if seeing it for the first time. It's a continuity clause, pretty standard in critical infrastructure contracts. "Standard." Mark's voice cracked. "It ties our entire data license to your employment status." "To my full compensation status," I corrected, "including all agreed-upon bonuses and incentives. You did read this before signing, right?" The silence was deafening. Richard leaned forward. "When was this clause added?" "During the third round of revisions, February 14th, the email chain was CC'd to Mark, Rebecca, and yourself. Subject line, Final Nexus Contract Revisions for Approval." Rebecca pulled up her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Her face went pale. "I have it. We approved it." "You approved it without reading it," I said calmly. I believe the exact response from Mark was, "Looks good. Ship it." Mark slammed his hand on the table. "You set us up." I protected myself. There's a difference. "This is extortion." "No," I said, setting down my coffee cup with deliberate precision. "Extortion would be if I threatened you. I'm not threatening anything. I negotiated a contract that protects my value to this company. You signed it. You then violated it by withholding my agreed-upon bonus. That's breach of contract. Your breach, not mine." Sarah cleared her throat. "Emily, what exactly happens if the compensation terms aren't met?" "Read section 7.3.3, I said. Rebecca flipped the page, read aloud. "Upon violation of the employment and compensation terms outlined in 7.3.2, the license enters a 30-day grace period, after which all data access privileges are automatically revoked pending resolution." Automatically, I emphasized. Not by me, by Nexus Systems' own security protocols. I couldn't stop it if I wanted to. "How long?" Richard's voice was dangerously quiet. "How long what?" "How long have we been in violation?" I pulled out my phone, made a show of checking the calendar. 16 days. You have 14 days left." The room erupted. Mark was shouting about lawsuits. Rebecca was frantically reading subclauses. Sarah was trying to calculate the exact bonus amount owed. Richard just stared at me, and I met his gaze without flinching. "Everyone out except Emily," he finally said. They filed out reluctantly. Mark shot me a look of pure venom as he passed. Richard waited until the door closed. "You're very clever." "I'm very thorough." "What do you want?" "What I'm owed. My bonus. 20% of first-year savings, as Mark promised in writing. That's nearly $500,000. 487,000 to be exact. The system saved more than projected." He leaned back. "And if we pay, then your license remains valid, your merger proceeds, and everyone wins. And if we don't?" I stood up, straightened my blazer. "Then in 14 days, at midnight, every dashboard goes dark, every query fails, every report shows license invalid, right in the middle of Global Tech's final due diligence review. They'll pull out. Probably. The company could collapse. That would be unfortunate." He studied me for a long moment. "You've changed, Emily." "No," I said, heading for the door. "I just stopped being invisible." I opened the door to find Mark, Rebecca, and half the executive team huddled outside, pretending not to eavesdrop. 14 days, I said to no one in particular, and walked back to my desk. The panic was palpable. I watched emergency meetings spawn more emergency meetings. Legal was on calls with Nexus Systems, trying to find a loophole. There wasn't one. I'd made sure of that. It was frantically trying to back up everything, preparing for the worst. Finance was calculating the cost of my bonus versus the cost of losing the merger. The funniest part, they still expected me to work, still sent me tickets, still asked for my help with system issues, and I still did it all, professionally, competently. Because I wasn't the villain in this story, I was just an engineer who'd learned to protect herself in a world that confused kindness with weakness. 13 days left. The tremors were becoming an earthquake. Day 0 arrived like a judge's gavel falling. I woke up at 5:45 a.m., made myself a proper breakfast for the first time in months. Eggs Benedict, fresh orange juice, coffee from the expensive beans I'd been saving. By the time I arrived at the office at 8:30, the IT department had been there all night. Tom, the infrastructure lead, looked like death warmed over. "Emily, please, just tell us there's a backup plan." "There is," I said. "Pay me what I'm owed." "That's not, technically, a system backup." "Tom, you're a good engineer. You know there's no workaround. The license validation happens at kernel level. Even if you could hack it, which you can't, it would violate federal computer fraud laws." He slumped in his chair. "We're so fucked." At 11:58 p.m., I sat at my desk, laptop open, watching the system diagnostics. The entire floor was packed. Richard Stern, Mark, Rebecca, the entire C-suite, half the board who'd flown in from New York, even some representatives from Global Tech who'd been told there was a minor technical review happening. Mark had tried one last power play at 6 p.m., offering me half the bonus. I'd simply pointed at the clock. 11:59. The main dashboard was up on the conference room screen. Green lights across the board. Sales data flowing. Customer analytics running. Predictive models calculating. Our beautiful, powerful system humming along perfectly. Midnight. For a moment, nothing happened. Mark actually started to smile, turning to Richard. "See, I told you she was bluffing." Then the first alert. A small red dot in the corner of the dashboard, then another, then 10, then hundreds, cascading across the screen like drops of blood. License validation failed. Every monitor in the building displayed the same message. The dashboard went black. The sales terminal crashed. The customer service system froze mid-query. Even the executive reporting platform, the one Richard used every morning to check company vitals, showed nothing but an error message. "Fix it," Mark screamed at the IT team. "Override it." Tom shook his head. "There's nothing to override. The license server isn't accepting our credentials. It's like we don't exist anymore." Rebecca was on the phone with Nexus Systems. I could hear her from across the room. "What do you mean you can't help? We're your biggest client." The Global Tech representatives were typing furiously on their phones. One of them, a severe woman in a charcoal suit, stood up. "Mr. Stern, we need an explanation, now." Richard looked at me. The entire room looked at me. I closed my laptop and stood. "The system is operating exactly as designed. The license terms were violated when my contractually guaranteed bonus was withheld. After a 30-day grace period, which expired 60 seconds ago, the license automatically revoked itself." "This is sabotage," Mark shouted. "This is contract law," I replied. "You might want to check with legal." Rebecca, still holding her phone, nodded miserably. "Nexus confirms. The clause is valid and enforceable. They can't restore access without the employment terms being met." The Global Tech woman's voice cut through the chaos. "Are you telling me your entire data infrastructure just failed because of an employment dispute?" "A contract violation," I corrected. "One that was easily preventable." She turned to Richard. "We need to reconvene. This level of operational risk is unacceptable." She and her team left without another word. The room fell silent except for the sound of error alerts pinging from various devices. Richard's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID, closed his eyes, and answered. "Yes, Jim." Even from where I stood, I could hear Global Tech's CEO on the other end. The words "deal" and "terminated" were crystal clear. When he hung up, Richard looked older than I'd ever seen him. "Global Tech is pulling out, effective immediately. $5 billion, gone, evaporated at the stroke of midnight." Mark collapsed into a chair. This can't be happening. Pay her, Tom said suddenly from the corner. Just pay her what she's owed and this ends. It's not that simple anymore, Rebecca said quietly. Global Tech won't come back. The merger is dead. Our stock will tank when the market opens. We're looking at potential bankruptcy. I picked up my personal belongings, a small box I'd actually packed days ago, and headed for the exit. Where are you going? Richard called after me. Home. My employment contract specifies that I can't be required to work in a non-functional technical environment. Since our entire data system is down, I'm taking a personal day, maybe a few. You destroyed us, Mark said, his voice hollow. I turned at the doorway, looked at the room full of executives who thought they were so clever, so untouchable. No, you destroyed yourselves the moment you decided I was expendable. I just refused to be collateral damage. The elevator doors closed on their shattered faces, and I descended into the Chicago night, where a bottle of very expensive champagne was waiting. The coffee shop on Madison Street was my sanctuary that morning. Corner table, perfect view of the chaos unfolding at North Bridge Tower across the street. Employees clustered outside, smoking, gesturing wildly, their Monday morning routine shattered by system-wide failure. My laptop showed the beautiful simplicity of my position: 17 missed calls, 43 unread emails, and 12 text messages, all desperate, all pleading. I opened the email I drafted 3 days ago. My lawyer Daniel had refined it to surgical precision. To Richard Stern, Mark Holloway, Rebecca Miles. CC Board of Directors, Northbridge Analytics. Subject resolution terms, time sensitive. Gentlemen and ladies. As you're aware, Northbridge Analytics is currently in breach of the Nexus Systems licensing agreement due to violation of compensation terms outlined in Appendix D, Section 7.3.2. I am prepared to resolve this matter under the following non-negotiable terms. Chart 1. Immediate payment of the originally promised bonus, $487,000. 2. Penalty for breach of contract, 40% of base amount, $194,800. 3. Buyout of the continuity clause, $2,000. Public acknowledgement of my role as chief architect of the data infrastructure system. Total compensation required, $2,681,800. These terms expire at 5 p.m. EST today. After that, my price doubles every 24 hours. I am not interested in negotiations, payment plans, or alternative arrangements. Wire transfer only. Emily Carter, Independent Data Architecture Consultant. I hit send and ordered another latte. The response came in 11 minutes. Richard himself, calling. I let it ring through to voicemail. Emily, this is Richard. We need to discuss your proposal. The numbers you're suggesting are... A pause, muffled conversation in the background. We can work something out. Call me back. Next came Mark, his voicemail dripping with barely contained rage. You think you've won, we'll sue you into oblivion. Theft of trade secrets, corporate sabotage, extortion. I forwarded that one to Daniel with a note. Please remind Mr. Holloway about defamation laws. At noon, Rebecca called. I actually answered this one. Emily, her voice was professional but strained. The board has reviewed your terms. And $2 million for the buyout seems excessive. It seemed excessive when my contributions were erased from the company history too. Yet here we are. The company is hemorrhaging money every hour the system is down. We've lost 3 major clients already. That sounds like a compelling reason to accept my terms quickly. She sighed. The public acknowledgement. Mark is fighting it. Mark is welcome to fight whatever he wants, from the unemployment line. That's another thing. The board wants his resignation in exchange for meeting your terms. I laughed, genuinely surprised. They're sacrificing him. He signed the contract without reading it. He withheld your bonus without authorization. The board is unhappy. Mark, thrown under the bus by the very people he tried to impress. There was poetry in that. That's between you and Mark. My terms stand regardless. If we agree, How quickly can you restore the system? I can't restore anything. Only Nexus systems can do that. Once they verify the contract terms are being met, I suggest you have the wire transfer ready. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it to find a screenshot from someone inside Northbridge. It showed their internal Slack. Hundreds of messages from panicked employees. Projects frozen, clients threatening to leave. The global tech deal officially terminated with a public statement citing unacceptable operational risks at Northbridge. Another text, this one from Tom in a T. They're offering people unpaid leave, saying it might be weeks before systems are back. This is insane. Then, at 3:27 p.m., another call from Richard. We accept, he said without preamble. All terms. All terms. The wire transfer will be initiated within the hour. Rebecca will send the public acknowledgement to PR for immediate release. And Mark? A pause. Mark is no longer with the company. I pulled up my banking app, waiting. At 4:15 p.m., the notification appeared. $2, 681, $800 deposited. Confirmed, I told Richard. I'll contact Nexus Systems now. How long until we're operational? That depends on how quickly Nexus processes the verification. Could be hours, could be days. Days, his voice cracked. Emily, we need this resolved immediately. You had 30 days to resolve it immediately. Now you're on Nexus's timeline, not mine. I hung up and dialed Nexus Systems' Contract Compliance Department. Explained the situation. Provided documentation of the wire transfer. They promised to review and restore access within 1 to 3 business days. I didn't tell Richard it would be 3 days. Let them sweat. My laptop dinged with a news alert. Northbridge Analytics announces Emily Carter as chief architect behind revolutionary data infrastructure. I raised my coffee cup to the window, toasting the dark tower across the street. Somewhere up there, executives were scrambling, boards were meeting, and careers were ending. And I was free, wealthy, vindicated. The champagne would have to wait. This latte was perfect enough. The call came at 9:43 p.m. I was in my apartment, jazz playing softly, reviewing job offers that had flooded in after the news broke. Funny how being publicly credited with building a $5 billion infrastructure suddenly made me very popular. Richard Stern. Direct line. I let it ring twice before answering. Emily. His voice was different, exhausted, defeated, human. We need to talk. We are talking. In person, please. Richard, you have my money. The announcement went out. Nexus has been notified. What else is there? The company is dying. I said nothing. 3 more major clients left today. Stock dropped 42%. The board is discussing Chapter 11. 400 people might lose their jobs. And you're calling me because you're the only one who actually understands what we built, what you built. A pause. I'm begging you to come back. I stood, walked to my window. The Chicago skyline glittered, indifferent to human drama. Come back after everything. Not as an employee, as a consultant, your rate, any rate. We need the systems operational. But more than that, we need to show stability, show that Emily Carter is still involved. You mean you need to stop the bleeding? Yes. His honesty was refreshing. No corporate speak, no positioning, just desperation. $1 million per month, I said. 3-month minimum contract, full autonomy. I report only to the board. Jesus Christ, Emily. That's my rate for saving companies that tried to erase me. Silence stretched between us. I could hear him breathing, calculating, wrestling with pride versus survival. I need to know something first, he said finally. Did you plan this from the beginning, the clause, the timing with the merger? I planned to protect myself. You planned to exploit me. My plan worked better. Mark convinced me you were replaceable, said we had plenty of engineers who could maintain the system. Mark couldn't maintain a WordPress blog without help. A bitter laugh. Yeah, we discovered that. He actually tried to hire a team to reverse engineer your code yesterday, before we fired him. How'd that work out? They looked at it for 3 hours and said it would take 18 months minimum to understand it fully, let alone replicate it. I smiled despite myself. My code was complex, yes, but not impossibly so. They were just realizing what they'd thrown away. The board meeting is tomorrow at 7 a.m. Richard continued. If you're willing to present your consulting terms, I can guarantee they'll approve them. They're terrified. Emily, the lawsuits alone from the failed merger could end us. I'll think about it. I need an answer tonight. No. You need systems back online. That's happening regardless. In 2 more days when Nexus processes the verification, what you want is credibility. My credibility. That's a different transaction. What do you want? Really beyond the money. I considered the question. What did I want? I had my vindication, my payout, my recognition. I could walk away now, watch Northbridge crumble from a distance, maybe send Mark a sympathy card when his mortgage defaulted. I want Mark's office, I said. What? The corner office with the skyline view. If I'm coming back, I want his office. It's yours. And I want to rebuild the entire engineering culture. No more stolen credit. No more erased contributions. Every engineer gets attribution for their work. Agreed. And Richard, this is non-negotiable. I want it in writing that no employee can ever have their contributions to company IP erased or reassigned without their explicit consent. A long pause. You're trying to protect others. Someone should... The Emily from 6 months ago wouldn't have demanded any of this. The Emily from 6 months ago believed the system would protect her if she just worked hard enough. That Emily was naive. And this Emily knows that power isn't given, it's taken, and held, and wielded when necessary. Will you come to the meeting? I looked at my reflection in the window. Professional blazer, but underneath, a warrior who'd won her war. Send me the calendar invite. I'll consider it. Emily, I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I should have valued you, should have seen what Mark was doing. You saw what you wanted to see, a quiet woman who wouldn't fight back. I was wrong. Yes, you were... I hung up. My phone immediately lit up with the calendar invite. 7 a.m. sharp. Board of Directors emergency session. Subject: Stabilization proposal. E. Carter Consulting. I poured myself a glass of the champagne I'd been saving. Not to celebrate, to consider. 400 jobs. Innocent people who'd had nothing to do with Mark's power games. They didn't deserve to suffer for executive arrogance. But saving them meant saving the company that had tried to destroy me. I took a sip, let the bubbles tickle my throat, and made my decision. They wanted Emily Carter back. They'd get her, but not the silent, compliant version they'd tried to exploit. They'd get the Emily who knew exactly what she was worth. The boardroom had never felt smaller. 12 executives crammed around the mahogany table, all trying not to look desperate. The stock ticker on the wall showed Northbridge down another 8% in pre-market trading. Someone had leaked the global tech pullout details. I walked in at exactly 7 a.m., power suit sharp as a blade, carrying nothing but confidence. Gentlemen, ladies. Richard stood. Thank you for coming, Emily. I took Mark's usual seat, the power spot, right angle to the CEO. Perfect view of everyone. A few board members exchanged glances. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said. You need me. I have terms, 1 million monthly, 3-month minimum, but that's just the beginning. I laid out my vision. Complete restructuring of engineering leadership, transparent attribution systems, a culture where builders were valued as much as talkers, where documentation meant reading, not skimming, where promises made were promises kept. You're asking us to rebuild from the ground up, said Patricia Wong, the lead board member. I'm offering to save your company. My conditions are part of that salvation. And if we refuse, I stood. Then I walk out that door, and in 48 hours when Nexus restores your systems, you can try to convince the market that everything's fine without me. Good luck with that. Sit down, Patricia said. We accept. The relief in the room was palpable. There's one more thing, Richard said. The press wants a statement about everything, the failed merger, Mark's termination, your return. I'll handle it, I said. The press release went out at 9 a.m. Emily Carter, Chief Technology Architect, returning to lead Northbridge through its transformation. The stock stopped falling. By noon, it had recovered 12%. Mark's office, my office now, still smelled like his pretentious cologne. I had facilities remove his awards, his vanity photos with minor celebrities, his collection of executive desk toys. In their place, I hung my original system diagrams, the ones they'd tried to erase. At 2 p.m., Nexus Systems called. Verification complete. Systems restoration beginning. I watched from my window as the lights came back on across the building, monitors flickering to life, the beautiful hum of data flowing through circuits I'd designed. The company's heartbeat restarted. Tom from IT was the first to knock. "It's working. Everything's working." Then Sarah from HR, then Rebecca, then a stream of engineers, analysts, developers, all with the same message, "Thank you." But I wasn't done. Over the next 3 months, I rebuilt more than systems. I rebuilt culture. Mark's cronies were identified and reassigned or released. Engineers got bylines on their work. The patent for the data infrastructure was re-registered with my name as primary inventor. Richard kept his distance, smart enough to let me work. The board extended my contract twice. By month 6, Northbridge was stable, not thriving like before, but alive. The global tech merger was dead forever, but smaller partnerships emerged, companies that valued stability over quick profits. On my last day as a consultant, Richard found me packing up the office. "You're really leaving. My work here is done. We could make you CTO, name your price." I smiled. I already named it, and got it. So what now? Now I take my $2.6 million, plus the $6 million in consulting fees, and start my own firm, Carter Data Systems. His face went pale. "You'll be our competitor." "No, I'll be your reminder. Every time you see my company's name, you'll remember what happens when you undervalue the people who build your kingdom." I walked out of Northbridge for the last time, but not as the quiet engineer they'd tried to erase. I left as a legend, the woman who brought a $5 billion company to its knees with a single contract clause, who demanded what she was worth and got it, who proved that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's success. The champagne, when I finally opened it in my new office, tasted like vindication, sweet, bubbly, and perfectly chilled. Mark, last I heard, he was working as a middle manager at a logistics company in Detroit, still talking big, still signing contracts without reading them. Some people never learn. But I did. I learned that respect isn't given, it's taken. That contracts are weapons if you know how to aim them. That the quietest person in the room often holds the most power. They thought I was harmless. They were wrong. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of sweet justice resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced something similar in your workplace? What would you have done in Emily's position? Your stories and perspectives make this community amazing. Until next time, remember, know your worth and never let them forget it.